Hello and welcome back to the Banger Bar for another edition of Overkill Reviews. My name is Sarah and today we're reviewing the newest album by Lockup entitled Demonization, out today on Listenable Records. So first, some insight into Lockup, which is a grind death supergroup. The band has been around for quite some time. They were formed by Shane Embury of Napalm Death. He formed the band back in 1998 with drummer Nicholas Barker, who has played live for pretty much every band, including Nuclear Assault, Gorgoroth, Cradle of Filth, Cancer, Night Rage, and Anal Nathrak. They were joined by guitarist Jesse Pintado, who may rest in peace, and he is the guy that gave Grindcore its name, and he played with Terrorizer, Nausea, Napalm Death, and Brujeria. And then they also had vocalist Peter Tagdrtigan, whose name I am completely butchering, but he's from Hypocrisy and Bloodbath. So the Lockup of today does not look like the Lockup of 1998. They've gone through now 3 vocalists. The previous one was Thomas Lindberg of At the Gates fame, and now they're on to vocalist Kevin Sharp, who was formerly the vocalist for Brutal Truth. So let's see how they fare in the latest incarnation of the band. So the first track that I'm going to talk about with my review, which I've done with all my reviews, is the opening track called Blood and Emptiness. And the reason why I always bring up the opening song is because it sets the tone for the rest of the release. And I think for Lockup right now, this is particularly relevant. It's the band's first release in 6 years. It's their first release with their third vocalist. Not only that, but we're not really in a market that is super conducive to death grind bands right now. So here it is, the opening segment of Blood and Emptiness. So there it is. God is dead, Satan lives. That's a great start, and it goes right into the incessant instrumentation that Lockup is known for. This is a death grind band. It's heavy, it's fast, it's pummeling, it's all of those adjectives that you read in metal reviews, but that's what this band does. So with the second clip, we are leading into more of the same, but this particular clip reminds me a lot of the incessant blasting in Nazem's I Hate People, which is my favorite grind song of all time. It's here that I'm having the first problem with the album, and that's kind of the triggered rototoms. They're just a little too clicky for me. And when I'm listening to grindcore or death grind or whatever iteration of the genre you want to call this music, I want it to sound less specific like that. So now we get the closing segment, which is the drumming also, again, of Nicholas Barker, who has been in the band as long as Shane Embury has been. And he's a great drummer, but altogether, I'm just not enjoying the production on the drums in this album so far. The next track that I'm going to be talking about is the album title track, which is Demonization. And the reason why I'm switching forward to track 4 is because tracks 1 through 3, they don't differentiate very much, whereas Demonization has a very cold, industrial, Godflesh-like feel. First up, you're treated to these floating, strange guitars. As the song progresses, it starts introducing these tasty chugging segments, and then you start hearing an unusually Cookie Monster growl from vocalist Kevin Sharp. And this is probably the heaviest I've ever heard him sing before. For this song and for this part of the song, it's here where the album just gets more differentiation. There's these militarized chugging drums, and so far this is the most interesting part of the record to me, simply because it is not what I'm hearing with the rest of the time. I feel like Lockup has a little bit of a problem with sounding samey, and this song is not samey, which is a huge relief. The song eventually ends up trailing off to a quiet end. And if you're kind of shaking your head, it's really not that unusual. The precedent has been set since Napalm Death's Scum, which Justin K. Broderick was part of, and then he went on to do Godflesh. And if Justin's watching this, you should definitely continue with Yezu because the floating pretty pop that you make is awesome. The next song that I'm going to be talking about is track 9, The Plague That Stalks the Darkness. It's a great song title. This song is definitely a keeper. It's got this chugging mid-pace section, and I just really like how it progresses, even if it pretty much stays the same the whole song.
Through the endless space of guilt, the fury of my own mistakes, this life is of my own design, which I pay the price, which I pray to mine.
So I said the song stays the same, but at this point we get a little bit more differentiation. The guitars are floating and they're a little bit weird. And then the breakdown. It's like 3 fucking seconds long. So for the rest of the record, we're getting pretty much the same approach. This is death grind. It's just like this continues for a long time. You're gonna get it here. Then you're gonna get it here. Then you get it here. Sorry, I meant here. So pretty much this whole time, we're getting the death grind template, which Lockup has based their entire career off of. Demonization finishes off with We Challenge Death. And at the end of the song, instead of all of the incessant death grind that we're hearing the rest of the album, we get back into the industrial segments where it's chugging, it's quiet, and it slowly trails off. So where does this all lead us? You'll find that out in the verdict. It's a bit of a struggle to describe a band like Lockup properly. And the reason why I say this is because I definitely respect the lineage of this band, but I do have a frequent problem with death grind. Something about grindcore to me, when it's really good, is when it's experimental. So when I say experimental, I mean what Napalm Death has done over the years, where they've thrown John Zorn in the mix, or they've decided to go a different route in terms of genre, or a band like Discordance Axis who has decided, hey, we're gonna put some strange power violence bits into our record, or a band like Pig Destroyer who decided to do a Doom EP with Natasha. There's just something about the genre that either you have to be incessant and fast and your songs have to be short, or you kind of end up being a little bit middling. And I think that's the problem essentially with this record, is that this record's kind of middling. It's not bad, but I'm not passionate about it. It's just there. So given that we're in this musical market where grindcore isn't that massive and there hasn't been that many large grind releases in the last couple of years, it's kind of a strange place that Lockup is in. Of course, Napalm Death is still doing their thing and they'll continue to do it until cockroaches are roaming the earth, at least I hope. I still think that the bands that are around doing the genre, they're few and far between. So we get bands like Unrest, or we get a band like Wake from Calgary who are doing something that's really heavy and really good, but they're more going the Nazem route, whereas Lockup is doing a meat and potatoes thing when I prefer souffle. So Demonization is not a bad record. It's actually quite a good record. It's just not a memorable record, and therein lies the essential problem with it. It's got good structures, it's heavy, there's some cool industrial parts, all of that stuff works, but essentially it's just not going to be something that I'm going to listen to a couple months down the road. And for all those reasons, I'm giving it 3 out of 5 skulls here on Overkill Reviews.